Welcome back to another episode of the We Live to Build podcast. This is 133 with Matthew Sneap. Matthew is the co-founder and chief business officer of Table Vibe, a platform which helps restaurants sell directly to online customers and deliver food instantly while saving a lot of money and retaining customer data. They're headquartered in Singapore and have so far raised over $1.5 million. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me, Matthew. I appreciate it. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about Table Vibe and how you came to be living in and starting a company in Singapore?
Table Vibe, essentially, we as you said, we're a commission-free online ordering platform for restaurants that saves them a ton of money and helps them to really own and grow their customer relationships with their online customers. So I moved to Singapore about 4 years or so ago, in December 2018. And I really saw that, while working at Google, we saw that, all decisions that we were making at the company were all based on data. And when we looked at the restaurant industry, we saw that a lot of restaurants were very much relying on third parties to do business. So that could be, loyalty apps, delivery apps, booking applications. And all of these applications are typically owning that customer relationship, and they charge pretty high fees in order to drive business for a restaurant. So with that in mind, we thought, well, it would be great for restaurants to own their own customer relationships and own their customer data, so they can actually understand their customer base and make better decisions on the back of that. And on the other hand, also we can help restaurants to reduce fees by creating software that can help them to sell directly to their online customers. So that's essentially how the Table Vibe idea was born. My co-founder and I, we were both working at the same company in the same team, and we were both based here in Singapore. So that's the primary reason why we started here.
So why don't you start by explaining the difference between you and someone like a Zomato or a Grubhub or whatever, DoorDash, these kinds of companies?
These type of apps typically charge like a 25 to 30% commission. So that means from every dollar you spend on those apps, about 25 to 30 cents goes to the delivery platform. We don't charge any commission, but we do charge a 2 to 5% service fee to the end customer. So, and we also partner with delivery companies to actually deliver food to the customers at a low flat fee. So what that means is that all in all, restaurants save anywhere between 50 and 80% in costs by processing orders with Table Vibe versus a Zomato or a DoorDash. And they also have the opportunity to pass on part of those cost savings to consumers. So it's really a win-win, both for consumers and restaurants to process orders on Table Vibe.
Now, you guys are incorporated in Singapore, right?
That's right, yeah.
And you have an office in Singapore, your employees are Singaporean, your investors are Singaporean, like that, or?
Well, we're a remote first company, so we do have a few employees here in Singapore, but we also have folks who work for us in the Philippines, Australia, the Netherlands, and Italy. So we're a remote first business. We have employees across the globe. Most of our restaurant partners are in Singapore, the Philippines, and Australia. We also have a few partners in the Netherlands, but we don't really actively do sales there. It's mostly just some inbound leads that came to us after we got some press.
So I have a friend that worked for Zomato for many years and in sales. She worked for them in the Philippines, Malaysia, and New Zealand. And part of their business model was they would actively go out into the streets and find businesses and just approach them door to door pretty much and say, hey, can we help you do this? And she's from mainland China, and so they would specifically task her with going to the Chinese-owned businesses in those various countries because she could speak to them in Mandarin and she could make them feel comfortable and all of that. How do you handle this process of dealing with leads?
Well, I've tried pretty much everything, going door to door, calling restaurants, using LinkedIn, sending cold emails. I mean, it's. I think what I found out is that different approaches work well for different types of restaurants. There's definitely a bit of it's definitely harder for me to sell to like a traditional Chinese hawker stall here in Singapore, right? I don't think that will be very successful if I would fully focus on that. But generally speaking, I'd say that door to door tends to work pretty well for smaller restaurants. So maybe restaurants with anywhere between 1 and 3 locations. For larger restaurant groups, I found it most successful to try and get in touch with someone who is like a decision maker on a group level. So I think for those type of leads, emails, events, cold calls tend to work best. I think one of the mistakes I made in the beginning is that power distances here in Asia are pretty large, right? So it typically means that decisions are made top down, whereas in Europe most of that tends to be a bit more democratic. So actually you have decision makers that are maybe marketing managers or somewhat lower in the hierarchy of the organization. So yeah, one thing I definitely learned is to start at the top rather than start at levels in the organization that are a little bit lower in hierarchy.
Yeah, I remember in Asia when I was, going out to business networking, carrying my cards and giving them to people and all that. Whenever my card said that I was the founder of something, it was always more wow than, oh, you're the business manager, right? So I'll give you an example. When I was first in Wuhan in central China, I was an English teacher. And when I would tell people I was an English teacher, they'd be like, wow, that's so great. That's a really important thing. But when I was traveling to Shanghai and Shenzhen and Guangzhou, and I would tell people, when I was living in Wuhan and I would travel to those places, I would say I was an English teacher, they would go, oh, you're an English teacher, right? So there's a geographical difference in opinions, at least in China. And so when I was finally in southern China and I was the HR manager of a company, it's oh, you're an HR manager. That was, special. But then when you're oh, I'm the founder of something, I've created this platform, this thing, and they're oh, wow, you're hot stuff, basically. Without you needing to have that kind of vibe of conceitment. So yeah, and it permeates through Hong Kong, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, a lot of Southeast Asian cultures, especially Philippines as well. So yeah, that definitely helps. You should probably, whoever your salespeople are that are going out and dealing with people, they should all be the owner. Just have them all be the owner. They're all the chief business development officer or something.
Yes, that will be exactly. That'll be a good idea. Yeah, exactly. All of them are country leads, general managers for their countries. Yeah. You could actually try that, right? I think to some extent, people do definitely look more at your job title, and I mean, we haven't really tried so far, but yeah, maybe we can use it to our advantage. Yeah, you're right.
Even I look at people's job titles. Mostly because I try to only talk to a founder or an investor, right? For the podcast, for example. You call yourself a chief business officer or chief.
Maybe I'm just a sales manager, Jean.
You might just be a sales manager, but you have the term co-founder in front of your name. So I don't care if you call yourself the chief. I'm going to take this company to the moon officer. If you're a co-founder, you're still a co-founder. But yeah, especially in Asia, these titles are really important. So what are some of the most important things you've learned besides that so far? From the external point of view, dealing with customers and what they like and what they don't like and what services you need to provide.
It's really important for us to keep a very close relationship with restaurateurs. I think the world where I'm from, like dealing with larger corporations which are focusing on growing the ROI of their advertising, it's a very numbers driven type of relationship, which, of course it's important to have good sales skills, but ultimately, those, like, you are dealing with sometimes a large team of professionals that are crunching data on a day-to-day basis and that are fully focused on squeezing or like maximizing their return on investment and squeezing every last penny out of their advertising budget, right? Whereas restaurateurs definitely also are data driven, but it's more of a relationship where also having a good personal connection is very important. So people have to, I think, also like you and have to, like what you're doing and have a good feeling about what you're doing in order for them to adopt your solutions. So I think that's one, large difference, I think, between the type of sales role I have right now versus the type of sales role I had at Google. The other thing is, working at Google, like, everyone picks up the phone, right? You're working with Google, so people are always interested in talking to you. Whereas with Table Vibe, we don't yet have that type of recognition. So it's certainly a lot more challenging to get people to talk to you. Even though we do see a good amount of like inbound interest and like a good amount of interest from restaurants generally in our products. I think not having that name recognition is definitely also changing and affecting the effectiveness of our sales process, right? So, yeah, I don't know if that's what you were asking for, but yeah, those are like the first two things that come to mind.
Do you think having the experience working for Google has helped to open doors with customers or investors?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when we started Table Vibe, we did a pitch for Y Combinator, and yeah, I think having working at a well-recognized American company definitely helped us. At least it didn't work against us. And yeah, if you look at it, if you zoom out a little bit, then we joined Y Combinator. Once we joined Y Combinator, we were we were in the spotlight of the VC community, and that really helped us to accelerate our business, right? So yeah, definitely, I think it has helped us a lot. Yeah.
What are the difficulties of trying to run a business like this where you're simultaneously opening multiple markets, but you are not physically there?
It is harder to do sales if you're not physically in that market, right? So what we're trying to do is hire really good people locally. So we recently hired a sales director in Australia. We hired a country lead for the Philippines. And so I think that is really helpful in order to scale our business. I don't think we can become the next unicorn in the restaurant tech space if we don't have boots on the ground or if we don't have people locally who are representing Table Vibe to restaurants. So the approach I typically take is that I try to do some sales from Singapore and create a few relationships with restaurants while working here. And if we see that those restaurants find success with Table Vibe and they love what we're doing, at that point I'm trying to recruit someone locally and to then really scale that business in that market. And I think now we're at a stage where we can safely say that we have found product market fit in most of the markets we operate in, specifically Singapore, the Philippines, and Australia. So that's a really great thing to have under our belts. And 2023 will be all about scaling our business. And with scaling our business, I also mean scaling up our local teams in those markets. So that's how I'm trying to approach it.
I find it interesting that one of the markets you didn't mention you have product market fit in is your home market.
You mean the Netherlands?
Well, Yeah, why do you think that is?
For a couple of reasons. I mean, we do have a few restaurant partners there who love what we're doing. But in order for our online ordering system in order for restaurants to really reap all the benefits of our online ordering system, it's really important for us to have that local delivery partnership. So far, we've integrated with and we partner with DoorDash, Uber, Grab, Foodpanda, Lalamove. But there's no similar company yet in the Netherlands that is offering those services to third parties like ourselves. And so Uber is active in the Netherlands, but they're not offering Uber Direct there yet. And so, yeah, that's our main reason for not really focusing on the Netherlands right now, because we feel that there's simply more value that our product is offering to restaurants in the three markets here in Asia.
Well, it's a very interesting insight. I've used Uber in some countries, Grab in countries like Malaysia, as well as Vietnam, Didi, Datra in China, Bolt in Portugal. I mean, like everywhere you go, there's these different local brands. It seems like the Netherlands doesn't have its own local transportation service, but maybe that's also because the Netherlands is so in tune with walking and riding bikes. Do you think that might be a reason why there's an issue there?
These services are definitely out there in the Netherlands, right? You've got Uber, you've got Thuisbezorgd or Takeaway.com, Getir, Gorillas for like 10-minute grocery deliveries. So these companies are out there. I think a difference is that most of these businesses, or so far all of these businesses, don't open up their delivery network to third parties like Tablefy. So that's the reason why we can roll out our online ordering system for pickup, but not for deliveries in the Netherlands just yet. But you're definitely right. I mean, the Netherlands is far more connected, and I was looking at this interesting YouTube clip from Not Just Bikes. I'm not sure if you know this YouTube channel, but they essentially compare infrastructure in America versus the Netherlands. And in America, they have this concept of stroads. So it's essentially a road which also has a lot of retail shops on it, but it's not really a pedestrian area, right? Like it's more like a sort of like a 6-lane road. And the point they're essentially making is that if you want to go anywhere in the US, maybe except for when you're living in like Manhattan in New York, you need a car, and all the infrastructure is focused on making it easy for people to transport themselves in cars. And the Netherlands is radically different, right? If you live in most cities, they are all very well connected by public transport. Anywhere you go, any road you're on is accessible for bikes. And so, yeah, that definitely does change people's behavior. And, it's not uncommon for someone in the Netherlands to go grocery shopping every second day or every day. Whereas I think in the US, you typically go grocery shopping maybe like once a week or so. Yeah, that does change things, and it does change how people interact with businesses. Yeah, absolutely.
You're completely correct. I think it has to do with the fact that a lot of countries in Europe have cities that are much older than cities in America, and so the infrastructure was designed at a time when automobiles didn't exist and there was no concept for them. And so the roads were much more narrow, and therefore it lended itself to walking or riding a horse, and now bicycles and all that, and so that's why and that's why that behavior is different. Now, about the difference between why Europeans go to the store every day or every other day versus Americans once a week, that I don't know why. But I remember when I was younger and I went to go study in Austria, the family had a much smaller fridge. And I think that might have been one of the reasons why they went to the store quite often. But also I think it's because people aren't really buying processed food the way Americans are. They have a lot less options, and therefore they tend to go for things that are fresh that'll go bad really fast. And so they're looking to buy something fresh, and they're gonna cook it that day, or maybe the next day, and then they go to the store to get the next thing. Whereas Americans typically buy processed foods or prepackaged frozen foods and things that they can just kind of heat up, in a few days or a week or whatever. Plus, they're also used to going to restaurants, and there's takeaway, and there's delivery and all of that. So there is a cultural difference behind it all, and I think that might be one of the reasons why things like Uber Eats and DoorDash and Grubhub are so successful in America specifically. Compared to other countries, just because of this lack of a desire to prepare fresh food. It's a lot faster to not do anything but press a button on your phone. Yeah. So, what have you learned recently from doing this business that's different from what we've already kind of come across?
One of the key lessons that we've learned is, it's really important for us to make sure that you kind of like look at businesses as solving a series of mini games, right? So right now, we, for example, when it comes to finding product market fit, like a lot of your friends are always asking you, okay, how many employees do you have, right? And as if that's an indicator of how well your business is doing. Whereas I think it's really important as an entrepreneur to not scale too fast until you have that certainty that you actually have product market fit. And it can be that can be quite stressful, right? And very difficult because we raised capital. We had a product that worked, but we felt that the first product we launched, which were QR code based feedback surveys, they were very valuable to restaurants, but not a absolute business essential. And so we wanted to create something that's really at the heart of a restaurant's business operations. And so that's why we introduced this online ordering system, where we now clearly have product market fit, and now we're ready to scale the business. But so I think one of the things I learned is to try and that's why I refer to this as mini games, is to try and solve problems one at a time. I think there's a big risk that if you go large too fast, it may you can actually like blow up your business in a negative sense. In other words, you can grow so fast that you are creating unsustained growth. So it's finding that balance, right, between on the one hand making sure that you grow fast but also try and do that in a sustainable way, and that's a constant balance you're trying to get right. That's one of the things I think that I really learned from starting a business. The other thing is I just think I have a new appreciation for how different countries can be. I think Singapore is a place which is English speaking, super business friendly, where people are generally very happy to adopt new solutions and try out new things. But then there's Indonesia can't be more different, right? So Indonesia, Batam is about 10 to 15 kilometer boat ride from Singapore. But when you're taking that boat ride and get off in Batam, it's a completely different universe, right? Different language, different people, a very different mindset. And so what's super important to scale a business here in Asia is to really think local first and think about, okay, how do people do business in the Philippines? What's the best way to enter that market? Should we maybe change our communication, or should we maybe change our value proposition to make sure that Table Vibe is appealing to businesses in those markets? Those are some of the things I think that I think of when it comes to learnings. Yeah, it's a very it's a very, very diverse region, and probably in many ways more diverse than Western and Northern Europe.
What I've found interesting in dealing with startups around Asia is that a lot of them are really only focused on their local economy. And the reason being is they don't have the energy or the money to understand other countries, and they think their market is big enough for them to try to dominate their own market. And maybe they'll come and try to get the next country over in a few years, right? They don't really think global unless they're kind of forced to.
There's also a huge amount of red tape, right? Operating in, like, going from one market to the other. I think, in the US you have one currency, one language. Europe nowadays, you have different languages, but you have a fairly homogeneous regulatory environment. One currency, and so it just also makes it a lot easier to scale to other markets and to be active there. Which I think in Asia you have ASEAN, you have so it is getting easier, I think, to cross borders, but it's still I think a lot harder than in Europe or America. Yeah, North America in particular.
What are some things you've learned about yourself since starting this business?
It is hard for me to always think 80-20. I think I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So I don't know. Sometimes that results in interesting conversations between my co-founder and myself. It's just, if you start your own business, it's like your baby, right? Like, you love for everything to be right, and yeah, I think I needed to learn, and I'm still learning, that taking an 80-20 approach is often most effective to grow the business. It is, starting. When I started the business, I think it's easy to, you need to do everything yourself, right? And so now I think we're at a stage where I'm trying to work a lot more on empowering our team, giving them the skills and knowledge to grow our business. And so I think what I learned, so I'm learning how to within my own business to be a good leader and to empower my team to drive the business forward. I think, one of the other things I'm trying to get better at is how to structure your day. Oftentimes when I wake up, there's another 50 emails, another 10 WhatsApp messages. People here in Asia also love to do business on WhatsApp, Viber, which makes it a lot more intrusive, right? Like email, you can sort of park it in your inbox and get to it when you feel when the time is right for you. Whereas, at least in my case right now, my WhatsApp and Viber messages are from my restaurant partners are sort of, and also from my team, are sort of mixed with private messages. So it makes it a lot harder to detach from work. And so I think what I need to get better at is making sure I have a very clear distinction between my work and my private life. Because if you don't, you just end up working 24/7, and I don't think it's very sustainable.
That's why Asians have two phones, one for business and one for their personal life.
Yeah, I should probably get that. I don't at the moment. So or I don't know, maybe opening a WhatsApp business account so you can separate the two. But I think it's still tied to the same phone number, right? So yeah, maybe I should just get a second phone.
I've never used WhatsApp Business as an owner, only as a customer, so I don't know how it works. But I think in Asia it's best to just have a second phone. I mean, I have one phone for work and all of that, but it doesn't bother me because it's not like I'm an employee of somebody else's company. It's a lot of the people I talk to are friends, but they're also business associates, so I see them all as the same thing. It's always pleasure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I used to view it as well. Yeah.
but maybe I've just convinced myself to work 24/7 and not think about it like that.
That could also be the reason. Yeah.
It's like I was on the treadmill at the gym earlier today. I was on the treadmill for an hour, and while I was on the treadmill, I was like checking to see if there was any messages, and I actually hopped onto a voice chat in Discord on an entrepreneur community, and I was chatting with some of them. So, is that healthy? I don't know. Probably not.
Well, it can also help to open doors that would otherwise remain closed, right? It is sometimes also super easy as a business owner to just like WhatsApp your customer and get a response within 5 seconds. That is like something that you will probably never or very rarely get on email. So yeah, there's also advantages, but yeah, I think it's all about having those expectations, right? People here in Singapore work incredibly long hours, and that's how they've built up this country, which is amazing. 50 years ago, when Lee Kuan Yew came into power, Singapore wasn't particularly wealthy or well developed, and absolutely. And through hard work and dedication, they've managed to develop the country to what it is today, which is very admirable. But it also means that people do have a super strong work ethic and work really long hours. And I think a lot of it is about managing expectations. That maybe at like 11 at night, you're not going to answer a message, and you will answer it the next day. That's definitely important. In order to make sure that you maintain some level of sanity, I'd say. Yeah.
What's been your most expensive mistake with the company? And if you have an actual financial amount tied to it, that would be awesome to know.
We've been pretty careful with like how we've been allocating investment so far. One thing that comes to mind is that at some point, it's not like huge. I think it was around 10,000 USD. But one thing we did was creating an explainer video for a solution. Having an explainer video as an early stage startup, unless you have like the tools to like easily change the message. I mean, your product is developing super fast, right? So before you know it, that explainer video will be outdated again. And so that's what kind of happened to us. So I think we spent about 10 grand on a video that we actually never published on our website.
I had another person I interviewed recently who said that his most expensive mistake was $1 million for his own business. So it cost his business $1 million in revenue. I won't go into those details, but yeah, very, very interesting mistake. And I've also made mistakes I won't mention here because we don't have time, but maybe in a future episode. So how can people follow up with you?
Chat to me on Twitter, on LinkedIn. They can also email me. My first name, @tailvibe.co. And if people are interested in connecting, I'd be more than happy to do so.
I appreciate it, Matthew. Don't forget that entrepreneurship is a marathon, not a sprint. So take care of yourself every day.